Hello, my name is Taylor Dale, and today we will be talking about the Pegasus spyware. So, a little intro into what we will be doing. First, we will discuss what Pegasus is, its features and capabilities, international and US governmental use, as well as some of its ethical considerations. As a forward, though, it is very important to note that Pegasus, within the context of surveillance technology, is very new. As of now, it is considered one of the most powerful malwares to date, and given its very sophisticated spyware system, it is very highly controversial with a lot of privacy concerns. So, the NSO Group is an Israeli cyber espionage technology firm founded by Niv Karmi, Shalev Julio, and Omri Levi. This created the acronym NSO. It is valued over 1 billion in US dollars, and a lot of their employees have backgrounds in Israeli intelligence services, aka Mossad, and the Pegasus spyware is able to affect both ISOs and Androids, and as of now, it is incapable of targeting US numbers starting with the +1. So, looking a little bit about the NSO group as a whole, it was founded in 2010 with the key mission of making the world a safer place by assisting state agencies in protecting the safety and security of citizens against major crimes and terrorism. They've had a lot of success in preventing terrorism, including gun violence, car bombs, suicide bombers, as well as breaking up pedophilia and sex and drug trafficking rings, locating kidnapped children, and assisting emergency search and rescue teams in finding survivors of natural disasters or construction failures. Some of their key values are accountability, excellence, integrity, and boldness. So, according to their 2021 Transparency and Responsibility Report, they released essential facts and their position regarding ethical considerations of the NSO group in relation to international business conduct. There's a large focus on human rights, and they talk a lot about how their services are being used by different agencies, all to protect its citizens. However, as of now, no private citizens license Pegasus, but there are over 40 countries that do. And this makes us pose the question of, with this limited data and lack of disclosure regarding who is licensing Pegasus, how can people ensure that this NSO group is following its own guidelines as we have seen their values earlier? So, moving on to some of the features and capabilities of Pegasus spyware, this software is a zero-click malware, meaning that the user does not need to click on anything for this spyware to be infected on their phone. Some of the biggest key capabilities of Pegasus is its ability to record audio and video from the user's phone, as well as extracting messages, tracking GPS, and recovering passwords to sensitive information. Another key feature is their ability to access data, specifically with capturing and copying the phone's basic functions, as well as collecting location data, call logs, and contacts to kind of build a personalized profile of the user that is being targeted by Pegasus. Now, for the international and US governmental use of Pegasus, we'll start off with some of the authoritarian uses of this spyware. Out of 3.8 billion people with internet access, 71% of those live in countries where they've been arrested or individuals have been arrested for posting content about social, political issues, normally in opposition to the authoritarian government at that time. Again, 59% of those 3.8 billion people live in countries where authoritarian governments have deployed pro government commentators to combat some of the negative comments from some descendants within certain authoritarian governments. Another key fact that authoritarian governments' use of Pegasus is that they use it for espionage purposes. And per the NSO, 12 investigations have been opened after the complaints of misuse of Pegasus. Lastly, one of the largest uses of Pegasus is for mass surveillance. And as of now, 18 countries have confirmed that they have been targeted or their journalists have been targeted by this software. And overall, this authoritarian use is a surveillance tool used against their civilians who are defending human rights or are democracy advocates, things like that. The militaries of authoritarian governments have also used this spyware to spy on its own citizens as well as foreign governments as well. And these intelligence capabilities are move forward in the ability of authoritarian governments to stifle its citizens. So as mentioned before, here are some of the confirmed countries with targeted journalists. Some of the big ones are Mexico, which is one of the first people confirmed to have used Pegasus spyware, as well as Spain and France, who have been targeted multiple times with Pegasus against their journalists, politicians, and etc. You can see a list of some of the other countries targeted, but overall, there has been a high wave and increase of use of Pegasus after 2021. So, some specific examples of authoritarian use come from Amnesty.org, who have been researching its use of Pegasus or general use of Pegasus against citizens. So, first and foremost, in the Dominican Republic, there was a high profile journalist targeted, Nudiera Piera, who was doing investigations related to corruption and bribery against the Dominican Republic high ranking officials as well as their former president. As well as in Armenia, 12 different public officials were targeted amid some conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh, and these included journalists, human rights defenders, and political oppositions that have been targeted with this malware. Lastly, in Egypt, some political opposers, specifically Ayman Noor, who is a prominent liberal politician, was hacked by the malware, and he often criticized Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, and later he was arrested and imprisoned for 3 years after the Pegasus spyware hacked his technology. The United States has a little bit of a different use of Pegasus spyware. Beginning in 2014, officials were approached to buy Pegasus spyware. However, it is very expensive and costs over $500,000 to just install the program, another $500,000 to actually access any phones. The FBI has licensed Pegasus supposedly for research and development, and they've spent over $5 million just using this software. They have developed plans and guidelines for how federal prosecutors can see how Pegasus would need to be disclosed in proceedings, as well as they've pushed to use Pegasus in criminal investigations, but ultimately were denied in 2021. Lastly, in 2019, there was a new spyware called Phantom, which is an off branch of Pegasus, also created by the NSO group, that is allowed to target +1 numbers, something that Pegasus was unable to do previously. This has then introduced a steady stream of controversies and introduced some policies from the United States. So, according to a formal White House press release, Biden signed an executive order in March of 2023 prohibiting operational use by the U.S. government of these spywares that pose national security risks or have been misused by foreign actors to violate human rights. This kind of shows the democratic core principles of the United States. And this executive order was signed right before the Summit of Democracy, where Biden co-hosted with Costa Rica, the Netherlands, Korea, and Zambia to hopefully deepen international cooperation and promote responsible use of this surveillance tech and overall spur some industry reform. This does lead us to question if Biden is really holding fast in this belief, or if this was just a ploy to show other countries that the U.S. is still a defender of privacy and freedom, given that the FBI is lobbying for its use within their department. Last but not least, some of the ethical considerations. We'll start off with some pros and cons. Obviously, Pegasus is a very valuable tool used for national security, crime prevention, and this allows governments to use this tool to track criminals as well as gather information to prevent future attacks and overall protect the well-being and safety of its citizens. Some tech advancements can also be used within Pegasus spyware to root out some of the vulnerabilities within different operation systems, and overall this tool can be used to have the U.S. stay ahead of criminals and terrorists who plan to use similar technology to execute their activities. Some of their cons, most importantly, the violation of privacy and human rights. There is no consent or judicial oversight. There is a lack of regulation, meaning no clear framework can be used to mitigate some of the security vulnerabilities in operating systems. And some of the societal effects also create a climate of fear that discourages individuals from expressing their opinions or acting in or participating in activism, overall dampening social progress. More specifically, within the national security versus privacy concerns, there is a severe issue with the privacy aspect of this Pegasus spyware. And per the international customary law, privacy concerns have been something that have been discussed. There's also an opportunity for Pegasus to create some trust deficit between allies and foreign adversaries. And lastly, there is a risk of infringing on the sovereignty of nation states if this spyware is being used to target specific foreign adversaries. Lastly, within the democratic ideals, due process and informed consent are two large things that the United States focuses on within their constitution as well as judicial proceedings. And this spyware would allow for a lot of political misuse and just overall undermining the democratic principles. Uh, Lastly, there is an ability for free speech of citizens and journalists to be targeted because they are expressing just overall concerns and sharing information against either governments or specific individuals. And this can have a large effect on the ability of civil society to progress and move forward. So, some of the alternatives to Pegasus spyware, there really aren't any that can be specifically used given that it's such a new technology. However, some of the things that can be done to prevent the negative effects of Pegasus spyware would to be to strengthen some legal frameworks regarding its use, maybe having government and tech companies collaborate to identify some of the security vulnerabilities that may be posed with Pegasus, as well as some cooperation between nations and how Pegasus can be mitigated on an international scale. Now, according to Amnesty.org, we as normal individuals usually aren't being targeted by this Pegasus spyware. However, if you are in fear, you can choose to reboot your phone daily to kind of get rid of any potential malware that might be on there, as well as not clicking on links received in messages or any phony, weird emails. And overall, just making sure that you're aware of your secure information on your devices and taking effective measures to protect it. All right, so thank you so much. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me here or you can shoot me a text. Thank you.